The mining station Kepler 442 hung in the darkness like a metal spider, its legs stretched out to catch asteroids rich with rare minerals. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck, watching the automated harvesters work their slow dance around floating rocks that contained enough platinum to buy a small planet. She pressed her palm against the cool glass and sighed. 3 years commanding this remote outpost had taught her that space was beautiful, but also very lonely. Her crew of 47 humans worked in shifts, mining the asteroid belt that separated human space from the Zilithian Empire. It was honest work, but dangerous. Pirates, equipment failures, and the constant threat of Zilithian raiders made every day a gamble with death. "Captain," came a voice behind her. Sarah turned to see Lieutenant Rodriguez, her second-in-command, approaching with a worried expression. "We've got a situation in Bay 7. You need to see this." Sarah followed Rodriguez through the station's narrow corridors. The walls hummed with the constant vibration of the life support systems, and the artificial gravity plates beneath their feet made soft clicking sounds as they walked. Kepler 442 wasn't a luxury station. Every surface was functional metal, every corner designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Bay 7 was one of the smaller docking areas, usually reserved for supply ships or emergency repairs. When Sarah arrived, she found most of her senior staff already gathered around something on the floor. Chief Engineer Martinez looked up as she approached. "We found her floating in an escape pod about an hour ago," Martinez said, stepping aside to give Sarah a clear view. The pod was damaged, barely holding atmosphere. She was unconscious when we brought her in. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Lying on a medical stretcher was a Zilithian female, but unlike any Zilithian she had ever seen. The alien woman was tall, maybe 7 feet, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the bay's harsh lights. Her hair was white as starlight and fell in waves past her shoulders. She wore what appeared to be some kind of advanced armor, but it was unlike anything in the human military databases. The armor itself was a marvel of engineering. It covered her from neck to toe in overlapping plates that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. The surface was dark purple, almost black, with lines of silver energy that pulsed in rhythm with her breathing. The helmet lay beside her, revealing a face that was both alien and strangely beautiful. "Is she alive?" Sarah asked. Dr. Kim, the station's chief medical officer, looked up from her scanner. "Very much alive. Her vital signs are strong, but she's exhausted. Whatever happened to her, she's been through hell. The interesting thing is, her armor seems to be providing some kind of medical support. I can detect nanomachines in her bloodstream, probably from the suit." Sarah knelt beside the stretcher and studied the alien woman's face. Zilithians were known throughout human space as brutal warriors, conquerors who had destroyed dozens of civilizations. Their empire stretched across half the galaxy, and they were currently at war with humanity. But this one looked different. Where Zilithian soldiers were usually scarred and heavily muscled, this woman seemed almost delicate. Her features were refined, aristocratic even. "Any identification?" Sarah asked. Rodriguez shook his head. "The escape pod had no markings, and we can't access the armor's systems." "But, Captain, there's something else. We detected a massive explosion in Zilithian space about 6 hours ago. Long-range sensors picked up the destruction of what might have been a capital ship." Sarah stood up, her mind racing. A Zilithian noble or officer in an unmarked escape pod, fleeing from what sounded like a major battle. This could be incredibly valuable intelligence, or it could be the most dangerous trap her crew had ever walked into. "Set up a containment field around the medical bay," she ordered. "Full security protocols. I want guards posted at all entrances, and keep our weapons charged. If she's some kind of sleeper agent or assassin, I don't want her taking out half my crew when she wakes up." "Captain," Dr. Kim interrupted, "there's something else you should know. I've been scanning her armor, and the energy readings are off the charts. Whatever power source that thing uses, it's not anything we understand. The technology is at least 100 years ahead of our best equipment." As if responding to their conversation, the alien woman's eyes suddenly opened. Sarah found herself looking into irises that were the deep purple of nebula clouds, with flecks of silver that seemed to move like stars. For a moment, neither human nor alien moved. Then, the Zilithian woman tried to sit up, winced in pain, and spoke in a voice like crystal bells. Where am I? Her words came out in perfect standard human, though with an accent that made each syllable sound like music. Sarah stepped forward, her hand resting on her sidearm. You're on mining station Kepler 442, in human space. I'm Captain Sarah Chen. What's your name? The alien woman's eyes widened, and she looked around the bay at the assembled humans. Sarah could see fear in those purple eyes, but also something else. Relief? My name is Kythera Velnaris, the woman said slowly. I was a princess of the third house of the Zilithian Empire. She paused, and, when she continued, her voice was bitter. Though I suppose that title means nothing now. A princess? Rodriguez whispered. Kythera struggled to sit up, and, this time Dr. Kim helped her. You must listen to me, humans. I know what you think of my people, and you are not wrong. But there are things you do not understand about the Empire. Things that even I did not fully comprehend until 3 days ago. Sarah remained standing, her hand still on her weapon. Go on. The war between our peoples, Kythera said, her voice growing stronger, it is not what it seems. The High Council told us that humanity was weak, that you were savages who needed to be conquered for the good of the galaxy. But I have seen the truth now. I have seen what the Empire really is. She looked down at her armored hands, and Sarah could see them trembling slightly. 3 days ago, I discovered that the High Council has been lying to our people for generations. The war is not about conquest or civilization. It is about harvesting. Harvesting? Sarah asked. Kythera's purple eyes met hers, and Sarah saw ancient pain there. Every species the Empire conquers is not just enslaved or killed. They are harvested. Their genetic material, their technology, their cultural knowledge, everything that makes them unique is extracted and integrated into Zilithian society. We are not conquerors, Captain Chen. We are parasites. The bay fell silent except for the hum of the station's systems. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. How do you know this? Because I am part of the third house, the house of science and research. I was given access to the deep archives, the restricted databases that contain records going back thousands of years. What I found there. She shuddered. The Zilithian race you know is not the original Zilithian race. We have absorbed so many other species that we barely remember what we once were. Dr. Kim leaned forward. That would explain the genetic diversity we've observed in captured Zilithian soldiers. We always wondered why there was so much variation in their physiology. Yes, Kythera nodded. Each house of the Empire represents different absorbed species. The first house carries the genetics of a warrior race from the Andromeda sector. The second house has the mental capabilities of a species that was pure intellect. My house, the third, combines the longevity and technological aptitude of a civilization that spanned 3 galaxies before we consumed them. Sarah finally sat down in a nearby chair. This was bigger than just intelligence about enemy troop movements or battle plans. If what this princess was saying was true, it changed everything they knew about the war. Why are you telling us this? She asked. Kythera's expression hardened. Because when I tried to present this information to the High Council, when I tried to argue that we should change our ways, they declared me a traitor. The explosion your sensors detected was my ship, the Divine Retribution. My own family ordered its destruction, with me aboard, to silence what they called dangerous ideas. But you escaped. Barely. My personal guard, soldiers who had served my house for decades, helped me reach an escape pod. They died buying me time. Tears that sparkled like liquid diamonds ran down her blue cheeks. They died because they believed, as I do, that there might be another way. Sarah looked around at her crew. Rodriguez appeared stunned. Dr. Kim was frantically taking notes on her tablet. Martinez was staring at Kithara's armor with the expression of an engineer who had just seen technology that shouldn't exist. "Princess," Sarah said carefully, "even if everything you're saying is true, you're one person. One person can't change an empire that spans half the galaxy." Kithara wiped her tears and straightened her shoulders. Despite being injured and alone among enemies, she suddenly looked every inch the royal she claimed to be. "You are correct, Captain. One person cannot change an empire. But one person with the right information in the right place at the right time can start a revolution." She gestured to her armor. "This suit contains complete technical specifications for Zilithian military technology, including our shield generators, our faster-than-light communication systems, and our temporal manipulation weapons. It also contains detailed maps of our military installations, our supply lines, and, most importantly, the location of the Harvest Worlds." "The Harvest Worlds?" "The planets where we keep the captured populations of conquered species. Billions of sentient beings, kept alive for continued genetic and cultural extraction. If your military could free even one of those worlds, the impact on Zilithian society would be enormous. Many of my people do not know these places exist." Sarah's mind raced. The intelligence value of what Kithara was offering was beyond calculation. It could turn the tide of the war. But it could also be an incredibly sophisticated trap. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" she asked. Kithara smiled, and, for the first time since waking up, she looked genuinely hopeful. "Because I am going to prove it to you. My armor's power source will last another 72 hours before it needs recharging. During that time, I can interface with your computer systems and show you everything. The databases, the tactical information, the proof of what I have told you." She paused and looked directly into Sarah's eyes. "But, Captain Chen, you must understand. If the Empire discovers that I have shared this information with humans, they will not just send ships to destroy this station. They will mobilize the entire Fourth Fleet. We are talking about 200 capital ships and 500,000 soldiers." The observation deck where Sarah had been standing just an hour ago suddenly felt very far away. The quiet, routine life of mining asteroids was about to become something much more dangerous. "Dr. Kim," Sarah said, "how long before she's medically cleared?" With the armor's medical support systems, she could be on her feet now if necessary. "But I'd recommend at least 12 hours of rest." Sarah nodded. "Princess, you'll be assigned quarters under guard. Not because you're a prisoner, but because if what you're saying is true, you're probably the most valuable person in human space right now. My crew's job is to keep you alive long enough to get this information to people who can use it." Kithara bowed her head. "I understand, Captain. And I thank you for not simply spacing me as many humans would have done." "Don't thank me yet," Sarah replied grimly. "If you're lying to me, if this is some kind of elaborate deception, I will personally throw you out an airlock. But if you're telling the truth." She looked around at her crew. "Then, we just became the most important mining station in human history." As her crew helped Kithara to her feet, Sarah watched the alien princess with growing amazement. The woman moved with fluid grace despite her injuries, and her armor seemed to respond to her movements like a second skin. When she walked, the energy lines on the suit pulsed brighter, and Sarah could hear a faint humming sound that seemed to resonate in her bones. "Captain," Martinez whispered as they escorted Kithara toward the guest quarters, "that armor is like nothing I've ever seen. The power density readings are impossible by our physics. If we could understand how it works." "One thing at a time, Chief," Sarah replied. But she was thinking the same thing. If Kithara's technology could be adapted to human use, it would revolutionize everything from space travel to planetary defense. As they reached the guest quarters, Kithara turned to Sarah. "Captain, there is one more thing you should know. My escape was not random. I chose to flee toward human space specifically because of intelligence reports I had read about your species." "What kind of reports?" Kithara's purple eyes sparkled with something that might have been admiration. "The Empire has been studying humanity for over 50 years, preparing for the war. What we found confused our analysts. Most species, when faced with Zilithian military superiority, either surrender immediately or fight with desperate fury until they are destroyed. But humans do something different. She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. Humans adapt. You take our weapons and improve them. You study our tactics and develop counters. You find weaknesses we did not know we had. In 50 years of warfare, no species has forced us to continuously evolve our strategies the way humanity has. Sarah felt a flush of pride despite herself. We're a stubborn species. No, Captain Chen. You are an ingenious species. And that is why I believe you might be the key to stopping the Empire's expansion. Not through conquest, but through transformation. As Sarah watched Kithara enter the guest quarters, escorted by 2 of her best security officers, she realized that everything about her life was about to change. The quiet mining station was about to become the center of a conflict that could determine the future of both human and Zilithian civilizations. She activated her communicator. Rodriguez, meet me in my ready room in 10 minutes. We need to contact headquarters immediately. Yes, ma'am. What should I tell them? Sarah looked back toward the guest quarters where an alien princess was probably settling in for her first night among humans. Tell them we've just made contact with someone who might end this war. And tell them to send every ship they can spare, because we're about to become the most dangerous place in known space. As she walked toward her ready room, Sarah couldn't shake the image of Kithara's tears sparkling like diamonds. An alien princess who had lost everything to expose the truth about her own people. Whether she was a saint or a spy, one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. Sarah's ready room felt smaller than usual as she stared at the encrypted transmission screen. Admiral Harrison's weathered face looked back at her from Earth Command, his expression grave as he processed what she had just told him. Captain Chen, let me make sure I understand this correctly, the Admiral said slowly. You have a Zilithian princess on your station, claiming to be a defector, offering intelligence that could change the course of the war? That's correct, sir. Princess Kithara Velnaris of the 3rd House. She's been unconscious for 12 hours now, but before that she provided details about Zilithian technology and strategy that our xenobiology team is still trying to process. Admiral Harrison rubbed his temples. Sarah, do you have any idea how insane this sounds? The Zilithians don't defect. In 200 years of contact with various alien species, there's never been a single recorded case of a Zilithian changing sides. I know how it sounds, sir. But her escape pod was genuine, the technology she's carrying is unlike anything we've seen, and the information she's provided so far has been consistent with our intelligence reports. Or she's the most sophisticated spy in galactic history, Harrison replied grimly. Captain, I'm ordering the battlecruiser Defiant to your position. Captain Rodriguez will take command of the security situation while you and your guest are transported to Earth for proper debriefing. Sarah felt her stomach drop. Sir, with respect, moving her off the station might not be wise. She claims the Empire will mobilize their entire 4th Fleet if they discover she's alive and talking to us. A battlecruiser escort might actually draw more attention. The 4th Fleet? Harrison's eyes widened. That's 200 ships, Captain. If they're willing to commit that level of force to silence one defector, then maybe we should listen to what she has to say before we risk everyone's lives moving her around the galaxy, Sarah finished. There was a long pause as the Admiral considered this. All right, Captain. You have 72 hours to evaluate your princess and her information. But I'm still sending the Defiant to your position. If this turns out to be legitimate, you'll need the protection. If it's a trap, you'll need the firepower. Understood, sir. And, Sarah? If there's even a chance this woman is telling the truth about harvest worlds and genetic absorption, we need to know everything. The War Council meets in 96 hours to discuss the Centauri offensive. If this intelligence could change our strategy, I need it before then. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts and a stack of preliminary reports from her crew. Dr. Kim's medical analysis filled 3 pages with technical details about Zilithian physiology, but the summary was simple. Princess Kithara was exactly what she appeared to be, a healthy Zilithian female in her biological prime, showing signs of recent stress and minor combat injuries. More interesting was Martinez's initial report on her armor. The chief engineer had spent 6 hours scanning the suit from every possible angle, and his findings read like science fiction. The armor's power source was some kind of contained antimatter reactor that should have been impossible to miniaturize. The energy output was equivalent to a small starship's engine, all packed into a device no larger than a human fist. Sarah was reading Martinez's speculation about the armor's defensive capabilities when her door chimed. "Come in." Dr. Kim entered, looking both excited and worried. "Captain, she's awake. And she's asking for you specifically." Sarah followed the doctor through the station's corridors toward the guest quarters. As they walked, Dr. Kim briefed her on Kithara's condition. "Physically, she's remarkable. The armor's medical systems have been working on her injuries while she slept. When she arrived, she had 3 broken ribs, a concussion, and extensive burns on her left arm. Now she shows no signs of trauma except some residual fatigue." "The armor healed her?" "As far as I can tell, yes. The nanotechnology is beyond anything in our medical databases. It's not just treating symptoms, it's actually regenerating damaged tissue at the cellular level." They reached the guest quarters, where 2 security guards stood at attention. Through the transparent aluminum door, Sarah could see Princess Kithara standing at the small room's viewport, looking out at the asteroid field. Her armor seemed to glow more brightly in the room's dim lighting. "Princess," Sarah said as she entered, "how are you feeling?" Kithara turned, and Sarah was struck again by how alien and yet familiar she seemed. The princess had removed her armor's gauntlets, revealing hands that were long-fingered and elegant, with skin that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. "Much better, thank you. Your Dr. Kim tells me that my armor's medical systems impressed her. In truth, they are not my technology, they are inherited from a species my people absorbed 1,200 years ago. The Etherians were master healers before we conquered their world." Sarah sat in the room's single chair while Dr. Kim took readings with her medical scanner. "You mentioned yesterday that you had proof of what you told us. Are you ready to share that proof?" "I am. But first, Captain Chen, may I ask you something?" "Go ahead." Kithara moved away from the viewport and sat on the room's narrow bed, her movements graceful despite the armor's bulk. "In your human histories, have there ever been times when your people realized they were following a path that was morally wrong? Times when individuals chose to stand against their own societies to prevent greater harm?" Sarah thought about it. "Many times. We have stories of people who stood up against slavery, against genocide, against oppression of all kinds. Sometimes they paid terrible prices for their choices." "Yes," Kithara nodded. "That is what I hoped. In Zilithian society, such choices are considered impossible. We are taught that the needs of the empire always supersede individual conscience. But 3 days ago, when I saw the truth about what we have done to countless civilizations, I realized that some choices transcend loyalty to one's people." She stood and walked to a small control panel built into her armor's forearm. "What I am about to show you will require access to your station's computer systems. I understand this is a significant security risk." "It is," Sarah agreed. "But we've taken precautions. You'll have access to an isolated system that can't interface with our main networks." Kithara nodded and began manipulating the controls on her armor. Immediately, the energy lines running along the suit brightened, and a holographic display materialized in the air above her wrist. Sarah and Dr. Kim watched in amazement as 3-dimensional star charts appeared, showing the galaxy from a perspective no human had ever seen. "This is the Zilithian Empire as it truly exists," Kithara said, gesturing to regions of space marked in different colors. "The red zones are what we call the active harvest worlds, planets where recently conquered populations are held for genetic and cultural extraction. The orange zones are processing worlds, where the extracted material is analyzed and integrated into our society. The yellow zones are breeding worlds, where hybrid populations are developed for specific purposes. Sarah felt sick. The colored regions covered nearly a quarter of the galaxy, including systems that human astronomers had assumed were either uninhabited or naturally hostile to life. "How many people are we talking about?" she asked. "Conservative estimates suggest 40 billion sentient beings across 300 worlds," Kithara replied quietly. "Some species have been in captivity for over 1,000 years. Their children have never known freedom." Dr. Kim moved closer to the holographic display. "This is incredible technology, but how do we know these star charts are accurate?" In response, Kithara manipulated her controls again, and the display changed to show detailed technical specifications. Sarah saw design schematics for Zilithian weapons, shield generators, and faster-than-light drives. The level of detail was extraordinary, blueprints that would have taken human intelligence services decades to acquire through traditional espionage. "Your military scientists will be able to verify these specifications against captured Zilithian equipment," Kithara said. "They will find them completely accurate. But, more importantly, they will find weaknesses that your people can exploit." "Weaknesses?" "Yes. The Empire's greatest strength is also its greatest vulnerability. Because we absorb technology from conquered species rather than developing our own, our systems are often incompatible with each other. Our shields, for example, are calibrated to stop weapons using certain energy frequencies. But they have gaps-specific wavelengths that can penetrate them completely." Sarah leaned forward, her military mind immediately grasping the implications. "You're talking about giving us the keys to your entire technological infrastructure." "I am talking about giving your people the tools to free 40 billion slaves and stop an empire that has been consuming civilizations for millennia," Kithara replied firmly. "But, I must warn you, Captain. This information comes with a terrible price." "What do you mean?" Kithara's purple eyes met Sarah's, and, in them the captain saw depths of pain that spoke of personal loss beyond imagination. "Once your people begin using this intelligence, once they start attacking harvest worlds and freeing populations, the Empire will realize that I am not dead. They will hunt me with resources that dwarf anything they have committed to this war so far." She gestured to her armor again, and the display changed to show massive starships unlike anything in human databases. "These are extinction fleet vessels. They are deployed only when the Empire faces what it considers an existential threat. Each ship carries enough firepower to sterilize the surface of an inhabited planet." Dr. Kim stepped back from the display. "How many ships are in an extinction fleet?" 1,000 capital ships, 5,000 support vessels, and 2 million soldiers equipped with technology that makes my armor look primitive," Kithara said simply. "If the Empire decides that humanity has become too dangerous to contain, they will deploy an extinction fleet against your species." Sarah felt the weight of this revelation settling on her shoulders. The intelligence Kithara was offering could save billions of lives and end the war in humanity's favor. But it could also trigger a response that would end human civilization entirely. "Princess, why are you really doing this? And don't tell me it's just because you discovered the truth about your people. There has to be something more personal driving you." Kithara was quiet for a long moment, her gaze distant. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I was there when they processed the Andromedans." "The Andromedans?" "A species from your neighboring galaxy. They were mathematicians and artists, peaceful beings who had never developed military technology. When we conquered them, I was assigned to oversee the cultural extraction process. I was young then, and I believed what I had been taught, that we were preserving their knowledge for the greater good of galactic civilization." Kithara's hands clenched into fists. "I watched as we took their children from their parents for genetic testing. I watched as we recorded their art, their music, their literature, and, then, destroyed the originals to ensure our copies were unique. I watched as we systematically erased everything that made them a distinct people." Tears began flowing down her blue cheeks again. "And I did nothing to stop it. For 300 years, I told myself that this was necessary, that the Empire knew best. But 3 days ago, when I accessed the deep archives, I learned that the Andromedans were not the first. They were the 47th species we had absorbed completely. 47 entire civilizations, wiped from existence so that the Empire could grow stronger. Sarah reached out and, despite every instinct warning her about touching an alien, placed her hand on Kithra's armored shoulder. "You can't change the past, Princess. But you can help us prevent it from happening again." "Can I?" Kithra looked up at her. "Captain, I have betrayed everything I was raised to believe in. I have condemned my own family and my house to destruction. The Empire will not just hunt me, they will execute everyone who ever knew me, as a warning to others who might consider defection. I have made myself the most wanted being in the galaxy, and, for what? To give your species information that might result in your complete annihilation?" Sarah stood up and began pacing the small room. "Princess, you said the Empire has been fighting humanity for 50 years. In all that time, have we ever given up? Have we ever stopped adapting, stopped finding new ways to survive and fight back? No, but then, trust us to find a way to use your intelligence without triggering this extinction fleet. Trust us to be smart enough and tough enough to handle the consequences." Kithra studied Sarah's face for a long moment. "You really believe your species can prevail against the Empire?" "I believe we can try. And, sometimes, trying is enough." A new voice came from the doorway. "Captain, you need to see this." Sarah turned to see Lieutenant Rodriguez standing in the entrance, holding a data pad with an expression of shock. "What is it?" "Long-range sensors have detected an energy signature approaching our position. It's moving faster than anything in our databases, and it's coming from the direction of Zilithian space." Sarah felt her blood turn to ice. "How long until it reaches us?" 6 hours, maybe less." Kithra stood up abruptly, her armor's energy lines blazing bright. "They found me," she whispered. "I don't know how, but they found me." "What kind of ship are we talking about?" Sarah asked. Kithra manipulated her armor's controls, and the holographic display changed to show a sleek, predatory-looking vessel bristling with weapons. That energy signature matches a Zilithian hunter-killer class ship. They are designed specifically for tracking down and destroying high-value targets. "How many crew?" 50 soldiers, all members of the Imperial Guard. They will not accept surrender, and they will not leave witnesses." Sarah activated her communicator. "All senior staff to the bridge immediately. We're going to yellow alert." As her crew rushed to prepare the station's defenses, Sarah looked at Kithra. "Princess, I need to know right now, is there any chance this is a rescue mission? Any chance they're coming to take you home?" Kithra's laugh was bitter. "Captain, the Imperial Guard does not rescue traitors. They execute them. And they execute anyone who has had contact with them." Sarah nodded grimly. "Then, we defend you. But, I need to know, is the intelligence you're carrying worth 47 human lives?" "It is worth 40 billion lives, Captain. The question is whether your people are brave enough to pay the price to save them." As alarms began sounding throughout the station, Sarah realized that in the next 6 hours, she was going to find out exactly how brave her crew really was. The quiet mining station was about to become a battleground, and the stakes were nothing less than the future of galactic civilization. The command center of Kepler 442 had never felt more cramped. Sarah stood at the central console, watching tactical displays that showed the approaching Zilithian vessel like a red arrow of death moving steadily toward their position. Around her, her senior staff worked frantically to prepare defenses that everyone knew were inadequate. "Time to contact," she asked. 4 hours and 37 minutes, Rodriguez replied from the sensor station. "Captain, I've been analyzing their approach vector. They're not coming directly at us. They're spiraling in, conducting active scans of the entire asteroid field." Chief Martinez looked up from the engineering console. "They're hunting. Looking for something specific." Princess Kithra stood at the back of the command center, her alien presence making the human crew nervous despite her helpful intentions. Her armor's energy lines pulsed steadily, and Sarah noticed that whenever Kithra moved, the display screens around her flickered slightly. "Princess," Sarah said, "what can you tell us about hunter-killer capabilities?" Kythera moved forward, and Sarah's crew unconsciously stepped aside to give her access to the central console. Hunter-killers are equipped with quantum resonance scanners capable of detecting specific genetic signatures from a distance of several light-hours. They are hunting for me specifically. Genetic signatures? Dr. Kim asked. Each Silithian house has distinct genetic markers that identify family lines and noble status. The ship will not stop searching until they have either captured me or confirmed my death. Sarah studied the tactical display. What about their weapons? Plasma cannons capable of vaporizing small asteroids, quantum torpedoes that can phase through standard shields, and, most dangerous of all, temporal displacement bombs. Temporal displacement? They erase their target from the time stream. The target doesn't just die, it never existed at all. Kythera's voice was quiet. It is considered the most merciful execution the Empire offers to traitors, since it spares their families the shame of their betrayal. The command center fell silent. Sarah had faced pirates, equipment failures, and natural disasters, but she had never contemplated fighting an enemy that could literally erase her from history. Captain, Rodriguez said suddenly, we're receiving a transmission from the hunter-killer. Put it on screen. The main display changed to show a Zilithian male in elaborate armor that made Kythera's suit look simple by comparison. His skin was the color of polished silver, and his eyes were solid black with no visible iris or pupil. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of absolute power. Human mining facility. I am Commander Thexron of the Imperial Guard. You are harboring a traitor to the Zilithian Empire. Surrender Princess Kythera Valneris immediately, and your deaths will be swift. Sarah stepped forward. This is Captain Sarah Chen, commanding officer of this station. We have no knowledge of any Zilithian princess. The commander's expression didn't change. Human, our scanners have detected Princess Kythera's genetic signature on your facility. Do not insult my intelligence with denials. You have 1 hour to place her in an escape pod and launch it toward my ship. Failure to comply will result in the complete destruction of your station and all aboard. And if we do surrender her? Then, you will all die quickly instead of slowly. The Empire cannot allow humans who have had contact with a traitor to survive. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah's crew staring at a blank screen. Well, Martinez said after a moment, at least we know where we stand. Sarah turned to Kythera. Princess, I need you to be completely honest with me. Is there any way off this station that doesn't involve fighting that ship? No, Kythera replied simply. Hunter-killers carry tracking sensors that can follow a warp signature for weeks. Even if you had ships capable of outrunning them, they would eventually find and destroy any vessel I was aboard. Dr. Kim looked up from her medical scanner. What about faking her death? If they think she's dead. The genetic scanners would detect the deception, Kythera said. They must either capture my living body or confirm my complete destruction. Sarah began pacing, her mind racing through options. What about their defenses? Any weaknesses we can exploit? Hunter-killers are designed to be nearly invulnerable. Their shields can deflect any weapon in your arsenal, and their armor is made from compounds that don't exist in this galaxy. Kythera paused. However, there is one possibility. What? My armor contains technologies from dozens of absorbed species. Some of those technologies were specifically designed to fight against other Zilithian systems, before those species were conquered. If I could interface directly with your station's weapon systems, I might be able to modify them. Martinez stepped forward eagerly. What kind of modifications? The Etherian healers who created my armor's medical systems also developed weapons that could disrupt Zilithian molecular cohesion. If we could adapt that technology to your mining lasers. Our mining lasers? Sarah asked. Yes. The industrial equipment you use to cut asteroids operates on frequencies similar to Etherian disruption weapons. With the right modifications, they might be able to penetrate hunter-killer armor. Sarah looked around at her crew. Chief, how long would modifications take? If the princess can provide technical specifications, maybe 2 hours. But, Captain, our mining lasers weren't designed for combat. They're slow-tracking, short-range tools for cutting rock. How close would we need to get? Sarah asked Kithara. Close enough that the hunter-killer's point defense systems would be targeting us constantly. Perhaps 500 meters. The command center fell quiet again as everyone considered the implications. Getting within 500 meters of a hunter-killer would require flying directly into the teeth of its weapons. Captain, Rodriguez said quietly, the Defiant is still 36 hours out. We're on our own. Sarah nodded. All right, people. We're going to do something that's probably suicidal, definitely against regulations, and possibly the stupidest thing in human military history. We're going to attack a hunter-killer with mining equipment. She turned to Martinez. Chief, take Princess Kithara to engineering. I want those laser modifications ready in 90 minutes. Yes, ma'am. Rodriguez, start plotting an intercept course. If we're going to do this, we'll meet them halfway. I'd rather fight in open space than have them shooting at us while we're docked to the station. Captain, Dr. Kim interrupted, with respect, this is insane. We're a mining station, not a warship. Sarah smiled grimly. Doctor, 3 days ago we were a mining station. Today we're the most important strategic asset in human space, and we're going to act like it. 2 hours later, Sarah stood in the modified cargo bay that now served as Kepler 442's combat bridge. Her crew had worked miracles in the time available, stripping mining equipment from throughout the station and mounting it as weapons. The modifications were crude, held together with emergency welds and jury-rigged power couplings, but, according to Kithara's calculations, they might actually work. Status report, she called out. Mining laser array operational, Martinez reported. We've got 6 modified cutting beams with Etherian disruption frequencies. Princess Kithara's armor is providing targeting data directly to our fire control systems. Maneuvering thrusters online, Rodriguez added. We've undocked from the station and we're approaching the intercept point. Princess, how are you holding up? Kithara stood at a specially designed interface console, her armor connected to the station's systems through cables that pulsed with energy. The connection is stable, Captain. I can maintain targeting coordination for approximately 1 hour before my armor's power systems overload. 1 hour should be enough, Sarah said, hoping she sounded more confident than she felt. Contact, Rodriguez announced. Hunter-killer is changing course to intercept. They're accelerating. On the main screen, Sarah could see the Zilithian ship approaching. It was smaller than she had expected, maybe twice the size of her mining station, but it moved with predatory grace that made her skin crawl. The hull was a dark purple that seemed to absorb light, and weapon ports along its sides glowed with ominous energy. Incoming transmission, Rodriguez reported. Put it through. Commander Thexron appeared on screen again, but this time his black eyes showed what might have been surprise. Captain Chen, you have chosen to resist rather than surrender the traitor. This decision will cost the lives of your crew. Commander, we don't give up our people to alien executioners. It's not in our nature. Your nature is irrelevant, human. You cannot hope to prevail against Imperial Guard technology. Sarah smiled. Maybe not. But, we're going to try anyway. It's what we do. The transmission ended, and, immediately the hunter-killer opened fire. Sarah watched in fascination and terror as streams of plasma energy reached across space toward them. The shots were impossibly accurate, but Rodriguez was ready. Evasive maneuvers, he called out, and Kepler 442 twisted away from the incoming fire with surprising agility for a mining station. Return fire, Sarah ordered. The modified mining lasers lanced out, 6 beams of coherent energy that had been tuned to frequencies no Zilithian ship was designed to resist. They struck the hunter-killer's shields and, for a moment, Sarah thought they had failed. The alien ship continued approaching, apparently unharmed. Then, Kithara spoke from her interface console. Direct hit on their forward shield generator. Shields at 60% efficiency.
The modifications worked? Martinez asked in amazement.
They worked, Kythera confirmed. But the hunter-killer is adapting.
They're rotating shield frequencies to compensate. Sarah watched the tactical display as the Zilithian ship continued its approach.
It was firing constantly now, plasma bolts that forced Rodriguez to keep them moving in unpredictable patterns. The range was closing steadily. 3,000 meters and, closing, Rodriguez reported.
They're gaining on us. Princess, can you compensate for their shield adaptations?
Yes, but each adjustment drains my armor's power reserves. I can maintain effectiveness for maybe 10 more minutes. Sarah realized they had one chance. The modifications were working, but only temporarily. They needed to get close enough to do decisive damage before Kythera's power ran out. Rodriguez, take us straight at them.
Captain? You heard me. Full acceleration toward the hunter-killer. We're going to ram them if necessary.
Sarah, Dr. Kim protested from her emergency station, they'll tear us apart at close range.
Maybe.
But, at close range, their shields won't protect them from a mining laser designed to cut through solid rock. Kepler 442 accelerated toward the hunter-killer, and the alien ship responded by increasing its rate of fire. Plasma bolts struck the station's improvised armor, and Sarah could feel the structure groaning under the assault.
Hull breach on Deck 7, someone reported.
Ignore it, Sarah replied.
Keep firing. The mining lasers continued their steady bombardment, and Kythera's modifications began telling.
The hunter-killer's shields fluctuated wildly as the Etherian frequencies disrupted their molecular cohesion.
Sections of the alien ship's armor began glowing red-hot where the beams found their mark.
1,000 meters, Rodriguez called out. 500 meters, he added seconds later.
Now, Sarah shouted. All 6 mining lasers focused on a single point on the hunter-killer's hull, right where Kythera's sensors indicated their main power coupling was located.
The alien ship twisted desperately, trying to avoid the concentrated fire, but it was too late. The Etherian-modified beams punched through the hunter-killer's armor like it was tissue paper. There was a brilliant flash as the alien ship's power systems overloaded, and, then, a series of secondary explosions that tore the vessel apart.
Target destroyed, Rodriguez reported in amazement.
Sarah slumped against her command console, hardly believing they had survived. Around her, her crew was cheering and congratulating each other on defeating an enemy that should have been invincible.
Princess, she called out, are you all right?
Kythera disconnected from the interface console and turned toward her. The energy lines on her armor were dim now, barely visible.
I am functional, Captain.
But my armor's power reserves are nearly depleted.
How long before it recharges?
It doesn't recharge, Captain Chen. The power source I carry is designed to last for one mission only.
I estimate I have perhaps 12 hours of life support remaining.
Sarah felt her victory turn to ash. They had saved Kythera from the Imperial Guard, but only temporarily.
Without her armor's life support, the alien princess would die anyway. There must be something we can do, Dr. Kim said. Kythera smiled sadly.
Doctor, my people designed this armor to ensure that captured agents could not be interrogated indefinitely.
The power limitation is intentional.
But, the intelligence you're carrying, Sarah protested. If you die, we lose everything.
No, Captain.
Before my power fails, I can transfer all the technical data to your computer systems. The star charts, the weapon specifications, the locations of the harvest worlds, all of it can be preserved. Sarah stared at the alien princess who had sacrificed everything to give humanity a chance against the Empire.
There has to be another way.
There is, Kythera said quietly.
But, you will not like it. What do you mean?
My armor's power source can be extracted and used to power other systems. If your engineers can adapt it to your technology, it could provide defensive shields for your entire station that would make you nearly invulnerable to Imperial attack. But, you would die without the power source.
Yes.
But, 40 billion slaves might live because of what I have given you.
Sarah looked around at her crew. They had just won an impossible victory against overwhelming odds, but the price of that victory was becoming clear. To save the galaxy, they might have to let their unlikely ally die. "Princess," she said finally, "let's worry about transferring the data first. Then, we'll figure out how to keep you alive long enough to see if your intelligence actually works." As her crew began the complex process of downloading Zilithian military secrets, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that their real war was just beginning. They had defeated one hunter-killer, but the Empire had thousands of ships. And, somewhere in Zilithian space, military leaders were probably already planning a response that would make the hunter-killer look like a minor threat. The alien woman who had fled her people to save 40 billion lives was still alive, but barely. And the clock was ticking toward a confrontation that would determine the future of galactic civilization. The transfer took 8 hours. Sarah watched from the engineering bay as her crew worked alongside Princess Kythera to download technologies that represented the accumulated knowledge of 47 conquered civilizations. The data streams flowing through improvised connections looked like rivers of light, and each file contained secrets that could revolutionize human understanding of the universe. "Captain," Martinez called out from beneath a jury-rigged interface panel, "the scale of this information is incredible. We're talking about technologies that are literally thousands of years beyond our current capabilities. Faster than light communication, matter conversion, even what appears to be time manipulation on a limited scale." Sarah nodded, but her attention was focused on Kythera. The princess sat connected to multiple data ports, her armor's energy lines growing dimmer by the hour. The transfer process was draining her remaining power at an accelerated rate. "How much longer?" Sarah asked. "2 more hours for the technical specifications," Kythera replied, her voice noticeably weaker than before. "But, Captain, there is something else we need to discuss. Something I have not told you about the Empire's response to my defection." "What do you mean?" Kythera gestured to Dr. Kim, who had been monitoring her vital signs throughout the transfer. "Doctor, would you please show the captain your latest readings?" Dr. Kim looked uncomfortable. "Princess, are you sure about this?" "Show her." Dr. Kim activated her medical scanner and displayed the results on a nearby screen. Sarah saw standard Zilithian physiology readings, but overlaid with something that made her blood run cold. "What am I looking at?" "A tracking implant," Kythera said simply. "Embedded in my spinal column during childhood, as is standard for all members of royal houses. It has been broadcasting my location to Imperial Command since the moment I arrived on your station." Sarah felt the deck seeming to drop out from under her feet. "You mean they've known exactly where you were this entire time?" "Yes. The hunter-killer was not sent to find me, Captain Chen. It was sent to test your capabilities. The Empire wanted to see how humans would respond to a threat against their newly acquired asset. And we've been performing for their entertainment," Sarah said bitterly. "No," Kythera shook her head. "You have been proving something much more important. The High Council expected the hunter-killer to destroy this station easily. They expected you to surrender me rather than risk your lives. Instead, you fought with technologies that should not have been able to damage an Imperial Guard vessel, and you won." Martinez looked up from his work. "Princess, if they've been tracking you all along, why haven't they sent a larger force?" "Because they are debating among themselves about how to respond. Some members of the High Council want to deploy the extinction fleet immediately. Others believe that humanity's unexpected resourcefulness makes you potentially valuable as slaves rather than enemies." "Slaves?" Dr. Kim asked. "Yes. The Empire has never encountered a species that could adapt captured technology as effectively as humans do. There are those who believe you might be more useful as a subject race, forced to develop weapons for the Empire, than as an extinct curiosity." Sarah began pacing the cramped engineering bay. "How long do we have before they make their decision?" "The High Council meets in cycles that last 48 hours. Based on Imperial communication protocols, I estimate you have 36 hours before a response fleet arrives in this system." "What kind of response fleet?" Kythera's expression grew grave. "If they decide to enslave humanity,
they will send a subjugation fleet. 50 capital ships designed to disable rather than destroy, followed by transport vessels carrying genetic modification equipment and neural conditioning systems.
And if they decide we're too dangerous to keep alive? Then, they will send the extinction fleet. 1,000 ships carrying enough firepower to sterilize every human world in the galaxy.
The engineering bay fell silent except for the hum of data transfer equipment. Sarah looked around at her crew, seeing her own thoughts reflected in their faces. They had thought defeating the hunter-killer was their greatest challenge, but it had only been the opening move in a much larger game. "Princess," she said finally, "there's something I don't understand.
If your tracking implant has been broadcasting our location all along, why did you warn us about the hunter-killer's approach? You could have let them surprise us."
"Because I wanted you to have a chance to prove yourselves, Captain. I have been studying your species for many years, and I believe humans possess qualities that could change the balance of power in this galaxy. But the High Council needed to see evidence of those qualities before they would consider alternatives to conquest or extinction."
"What alternatives?"
"Alliance." The word hung in the air like an impossible dream. Sarah stared at Kithara, trying to process what she had just heard.
Alliance? Between humans and the Zilithian Empire?
"Between humans and those elements of Zilithian society that oppose the current system," Kithara clarified.
"Captain, you must understand that not all Zilithians support the harvest program.
Many of us are horrified by what our people have become. But we have been powerless to change the system from within."
Martinez crawled out from under the interface panel, his expression thoughtful.
"Princess, you're talking about civil war."
"I am talking about revolution, Chief Martinez. A fundamental transformation of Zilithian society, led by those who believe there must be a better way. And what would humans get out of this alliance?
Technology that would make your species the most powerful force in the galaxy within a generation. Access to knowledge accumulated from 47 conquered civilizations. And, most importantly, the freedom to develop without the constant threat of imperial invasion."
"And what would your people get?" "A chance to redeem themselves for millennia of atrocities. A chance to become a force for creation rather than destruction.
A chance to prove that the Zilithian people can be more than parasites feeding on the achievements of others." Sarah looked at the data streams still flowing through the connections between Kithara's armor and their computer systems.
"How many Zilithians support this revolution of yours?" "More than you might think.
The third house, which I represent, controls most of the Empire's scientific resources. The fifth house manages agricultural production and has long opposed the waste inherent in the harvest system. Even elements within the first house, the military nobility, are growing tired of endless conquest. But not enough to challenge the High Council openly.
Not until now.
Captain Chen, your victory over the hunter-killer has already begun to change things. Word of that battle is spreading through Imperial communication networks.
For the first time in centuries, Zilithians are asking questions about our supposed technological superiority. Dr. Kim looked up from monitoring the data transfer.
"Princess, your power levels are dropping faster than projected. We need to complete the transfer now if we're going to preserve all the intelligence." Kithara nodded and closed her eyes, concentrating on the connection between her armor and the human computer systems. The energy lines along her suit pulsed brighter for a moment, then began fading rapidly. "It is done," she said softly. "Everything I carry, the star charts, the technical specifications, the strategic intelligence about Imperial defenses, all of it is now in your possession."
Sarah activated her communicator. "All senior staff to engineering immediately."
Within minutes, Rodriguez, Dr. Kim, Martinez, and the rest of her command crew had gathered around the interface station where Kithara sat slumped in her rapidly failing armor. "People," Sarah began, "in the next few hours, we're going to make decisions that will affect the future of human civilization. Princess Kithara has given us intelligence that could change the course of the war, but using that intelligence comes with enormous risks." She gestured to the data screens showing the downloaded information. "We now know the locations of every harvest world in Zilithian space.
We have technical specifications for their weapons, their shields, their faster-than-light drives. We have star charts showing their supply lines and military installations. In short, we have everything we need to hit them where they're most vulnerable. But, Rodriguez said, clearly sensing there was more to the story. But, using this intelligence will trigger either a subjugation fleet or an extinction fleet response. If we're lucky, they'll try to enslave us. If we're unlucky, they'll try to wipe us out completely. Martinez leaned forward. Captain, what about this alliance the princess mentioned? Could we really form some kind of partnership with rebel Zilithians? Sarah looked at Kithara, who was struggling to remain conscious as her armor's power failed. Princess, if we choose to pursue this alliance option, what would you need from us? Proof that humans can liberate a harvest world, Kithara replied with effort. If you could free even one population of enslaved beings and broadcast evidence of their liberation throughout Imperial space, it would provide the spark needed to ignite widespread rebellion. Which harvest world would be the best target? Zirian Prime. It's lightly defended because the population there has been in captivity for over 600 years. The Imperial garrison considers them completely pacified. But Zirian Prime holds representatives from 12 different species, including some of the most advanced civilizations the Empire has ever conquered. How many people are we talking about? Approximately 50 million sentient beings across 6 continents. The engineering bay fell silent as everyone contemplated the scale of what they were discussing. 50 million people who had been enslaved for centuries, waiting for rescue that had never come. Captain, Dr. Kim said quietly, Princess Kithara's vital signs are becoming critical. Her armor's life support is failing. Sarah knelt beside Kithara's chair. Princess, if we attempt this liberation, will you live to see it? Kithara smiled weakly. Captain Chen, my armor contains one final gift for your people. The power source that has kept me alive can be extracted and adapted to provide energy for a small human vessel. Enough power to reach Zirian Prime and return, even through Imperial space. But you would die. I would die knowing that I had done everything possible to atone for my people's crimes. And I would die knowing that 40 billion slaves might yet taste freedom. Sarah stood up and looked around at her crew. People, we have a choice. We can send this intelligence to Earth Command and let them decide how to use it. Safe option, probably the smart option. Or we can take a mining station, convert it into a rescue ship, and attempt the most audacious rescue mission in galactic history. Captain, Rodriguez said, with respect, we're not military heroes. We're miners. We don't even have proper weapons. No, Sarah agreed, but we have something more important than weapons. We have 47 civilizations worth of technology, and we have the one thing that has always made humans dangerous. What's that? We have the absolute refusal to leave people behind when we have the power to save them. She looked at each member of her crew in turn. I won't order anyone to participate in this mission. But I'm going to Zirian Prime, with or without you. 50 million people have been waiting 600 years for rescue. I think it's time someone showed up. One by one, her crew stepped forward. Rodriguez first, then Martinez, then Dr. Kim, then the rest. Even knowing the enormous risks, even knowing they were probably flying to their deaths, they chose to stand with their captain. Kithara watched this display of human loyalty with wonder in her fading purple eyes. Captain Chen, I begin to understand why the Empire fears your species so greatly. As her crew began preparations for the most impossible mission in human history, Sarah couldn't help but think that the alien woman who had fled her people might have given humanity something more valuable than technology or intelligence. She had given them hope. The modification of Kepler 442 took 18 hours. Sarah watched from the observation deck as her crew transformed their humble mining station into something that barely resembled its original purpose. The mining equipment had been reconfigured into weapons using Kithara's technological specifications. The cargo bays had been converted into holding areas for refugees. Most dramatically, the station's power core had been replaced with Kithara's extracted armor technology. Princess Kithara lay in the medical bay, kept alive by human life support equipment that was primitive compared to her people's technology but was working well enough. Dr. Kim had warned that the extraction of her armor's power source would be fatal within hours, but Kithara had insisted on completing the transfer. Captain, Martinez called over the communication system. The power integration is complete. I've never seen anything like this. The Etherian energy source is providing 3 times our normal output, and it's completely stable. Sarah activated her communicator. How long will it last? According to the princess's calculations, approximately 6 months of normal operations. But if we push it to full power for combat and faster than light travel, maybe 48 hours. 48 hours to travel to Zirian Prime, liberate 50 million slaves, and return to human space. It seemed impossible, but then, again, everything they had accomplished in the past few days had seemed impossible. Captain Chen to the bridge, came Rodriguez's voice. We're receiving a transmission from the Defiant. Sarah made her way to the command center, where the main screen showed Captain Marcus Webb of the heavy cruiser Defiant. Webb was a career military officer with over 20 years of experience fighting Zilithians, and his expression suggested he thought Sarah had lost her mind. Captain Chen, Webb said without preamble, I've received your mission report and the intelligence data you've transmitted to Earth Command. Admiral Harrison has ordered me to take you and your asset back to Earth immediately for proper debriefing. Captain Webb, with respect, we don't have time for proper debriefing. Our intelligence indicates that the Empire will respond to our actions within the next 18 hours. If we're going to use Princess Kithara's information to save lives, we need to act now. Captain, you're talking about flying a converted mining station into the heart of Zilithian space to attempt a rescue that would require an entire fleet of warships. It's suicide. Sarah looked around at her crew, who had gathered on the bridge to hear the conversation. Captain Webb, 3 days ago I would have agreed with you. But 3 days ago I thought Zilithian technology was invulnerable. 3 days ago I thought the Empire was an unstoppable force that humanity could only hope to resist. 3 days ago I didn't know that there were 50 million people waiting for someone to care enough to try saving them. Webb's expression softened slightly. Sarah, I understand the impulse. But you're not trained for this kind of mission. Let Earth Command plan a proper assault with ships designed for combat. How long would that take? Webb hesitated. A few months to organize and prepare. A few months during which 50 million people continue to suffer, and during which the Empire has time to move them to more secure facilities. Captain, the window is now. If we don't go immediately, we'll never get another chance. Rodriguez stepped forward. Captain Webb, we've run the calculations. With Princess Kithara's modifications, we can reach Zirian Prime in 12 hours. The planet's defenses are minimal because the Empire considers the population completely pacified. We estimate a 90% chance of successful insertion. And what about extraction? Even if you manage to land and free some prisoners, how do you expect to get back out? Sarah smiled grimly. That's where the plan gets interesting. Princess Kithara has provided us with Imperial communication codes. Once we liberate the first facility, we're going to broadcast a message across the entire Zilithian Empire, showing the galaxy that the supposedly invincible Empire can be beaten. The psychological impact alone could trigger widespread rebellion, Dr. Kim added. But, more importantly, it will prove to enslaved populations throughout Imperial space that rescue is possible. Webb stared at them for a long moment. You're all completely insane. Yes, sir, Sarah agreed cheerfully. But, we're also completely committed. Are you going to help us, or are you going to try to stop us? Webb sighed deeply. Earth Command is going to have my commission for this. But Defiant will escort you to the edge of Zilithian space. Once you cross the border, you're on your own. And if this goes wrong, I'm under orders to make sure the Empire doesn't capture any survivors who could compromise human intelligence operations. Sarah nodded grimly. She understood the implication. If the mission failed, Webb would have to destroy Kepler 442 to prevent the Empire from learning how humans had acquired Zilithian technology. Understood, Captain. We'll try not to put you in that position. The journey to Zirion Prime took 13 hours through hyperspace corridors that no human ship had ever traveled. Sarah spent most of the trip in the medical bay, sitting beside Princess Kithera's bed as the alien woman grew progressively weaker.
"Captain," Kithera whispered, her voice barely audible, "there is something I must tell you before we arrive at Zirion Prime."
"What is it, Princess?"
"The beings you will find there, they have been enslaved for over 600 years. Many of them have never known freedom. Some may not want to leave the only life they have ever known."
Sarah frowned. "I don't understand."
"The Empire is very sophisticated in its methods of control.
Physical restraints are not necessary when psychological conditioning is complete. Some of the enslaved populations may resist rescue attempts because they have been taught to fear the outside galaxy. How do we handle that?
With patience and compassion.
Show them freedom rather than forcing it upon them.
Demonstrate that there is a life beyond the harvest worlds, and let them choose for themselves."
Kithera struggled to sit up. "Captain Chen, I need you to understand something about what you are attempting. This mission will either save 40 billion lives or doom them to even worse suffering.
If you fail, the Empire will respond by tightening security on all harvest worlds.
The small freedoms that some populations still enjoy will disappear forever."
"Then, we won't fail," Sarah said simply.
"How can you be so certain?"
Sarah thought about her crew, working around the clock to prepare for a mission that terrified all of them. She thought about humanity's history of impossible rescues, desperate stands, and refusal to abandon hope even when victory seemed impossible.
"Because that's what humans do, Princess. We adapt, we improvise, and we never give up. Especially when people are counting on us." Kithera smiled.
"I pray that you are correct." 8 hours later, Kepler 442 dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zirion system. Sarah stood on the bridge, looking at sensor readings that showed a star system that had once been home to a thriving interstellar civilization and was now nothing more than a prison camp.
"Tactical analysis," she ordered.
Rodriguez worked at his station, comparing their sensor data to Kithera's intelligence files.
3 orbital defense platforms, minimal weapons.
2 patrol ships conducting routine sweeps.
Ground installations show approximately 50,000 Imperial personnel overseeing the enslaved population. 50,000 guards for 50 million prisoners? Dr. Kim asked.
"When you've been successfully oppressing people for 6 centuries, you don't need many guards," Sarah replied grimly.
"What about the population centers?"
"Concentrated in 6 major cities, just as Princess Kithera indicated. The largest facility holds approximately 12 million beings from multiple species."
Sarah studied the tactical display showing Zirion Prime hanging in space like a beautiful blue and green jewel that concealed unimaginable suffering.
"We'll hit the largest facility first. Maximum psychological impact."
"Captain," Martinez reported from the engineering station, "the modifications to our systems are holding steady.
We can maintain full power for another 36 hours.
That should be enough."
"Rodriguez, plot a course for the primary detention facility."
"We're going in fast and hard." The descent through Zirion Prime's atmosphere was surreal.
Sarah watched through the main screen as they passed over continents that had once supported a magnificent civilization. Now she could see the geometric patterns of massive detention complexes stretching to the horizon, each one housing millions of enslaved beings.
"Incoming transmission from surface control," Rodriguez reported. "Let them talk to us," Sarah ordered.
The main screen showed a Zalithian officer in standard Imperial garrison uniform.
His expression was one of confused annoyance rather than alarm. "Unidentified vessel, you are entering restricted airspace without proper clearance codes. State your business on Zirion Prime." Sarah stepped forward. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Human Liberation Fleet. We're here to free your prisoners." The officer's expression shifted from annoyance to disbelief. "Human? Impossible. Human ships cannot reach the system."
"We're full of surprises," Sarah replied. "You have 30 seconds to surrender your facility or we'll take it by force." The officer began to respond, but Sarah cut the transmission.
Rodriguez, take us down. All weapons hot.
Kepler 442 descended toward the primary detention facility like a falling star. The complex was enormous, covering hundreds of square kilometers with high walls, guard towers, and what appeared to be processing buildings. Sarah could see thousands of figures moving within the compound, the enslaved populations that had been waiting centuries for rescue.
The defense response was pathetic.
The Imperial garrison had grown complacent after 600 years of unchallenged control.
Their weapons were designed for crowd control rather than defending against attack from space.
Kepler 442's modified mining lasers, still enhanced with Etherian technology, cut through their defenses like they were made of paper. Landing zone secured, Rodriguez reported as they settled into the center of the main compound.
Local resistance neutralized. Sarah activated the ship's external speakers. Attention, people of Zirian Prime. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Human Liberation Fleet. You are no longer prisoners of the Zilithian Empire. We are here to take you home.
The response was not what she had expected. Instead of cheers or celebration, there was only silence. Through the external cameras, Sarah could see thousands of beings, creatures from a dozen different species, staring at their ship with expressions of fear and confusion.
Captain, Dr. Kim said quietly, Princess Kithara warned us about this.
They don't know how to react to freedom.
Sarah nodded and opened a channel to the entire ship. All crew, remember your training. These people have been conditioned to fear change. We show them freedom by example, not by force.
Over the next 6 hours, Sarah and her crew worked to establish contact with the various species represented in the detention facility. It was slow, careful work. Many of the enslaved populations spoke languages that had been extinct for centuries. Others had been so thoroughly conditioned that they viewed their rescuers as just another threat.
But, gradually, progress was made.
A group of tall, crystalline beings who had been mathematical geniuses before their world was conquered began to understand that the humans were genuine liberators. A population of small, furry creatures who had once been master engineers started helping to disable Imperial security systems.
The breakthrough came when Sarah met with the informal leaders of the various populations.
They gathered in what had once been the compound's main processing center, a building designed to strip newly captured beings of their cultural identity.
We understand what you are offering, said Vex.